Taking the time out of your day to join us. This is Tim Borio with Alliance Solutions Group. Today with us we have our General Manager of our Texas operations, Kevin Smith, CPA, here with us to discuss how you can, with using Sage 100 Contractor, stay on top of all of your project costs. So before we actually get into the content, I want to take care of a couple housekeeping items. Everybody is muted, but I want to make sure that you can hear me, so if you could click the button to raise your hand if you can hear me, I'd appreciate it. In the control panel on the right side of your screen, great, thank you. And we do want this to be somewhat of an interactive session, but since everybody's muted, if you do have questions, you can go ahead and enter them into the questions box on the control panel, or you can just type them right into the chat, all right? So before we get started with the content, just who we are, Alliance Solutions Group, we live and breathe construction and real estate specific software every day. And that's important is because we can speak your language. Our staff is deeply experienced either in financial management and or has construction experience, so we understand what your day-to-day is like. And also, we're local in your areas that we serve for the most part, and that just allows us to be aware of any local economic conditions or anything unique that's going on in your area. So we primarily serve construction and real estate businesses in the green states, but we do have clients elsewhere. The blue dots are where we have offices, and as you can see, we represent a variety of solutions. Not all of them are listed, but we've helped many customers. We have over 4,000 active customers throughout the U.S. and the Caribbean. A little bit about Sage, more than 50,000 construction and real estate businesses, not users but businesses, trust Sage to help them manage more than 500,000 projects on an annual basis. And there's nobody else in the industry that has a depth of experience or reach and the proven track record that Sage demonstrates within its construction and real estate division. So a little bit back to Alliance Solutions Group, the right fit. We work with the gold standard solutions for estimating job cost, project management, human resources, and they're all used by leading construction and real estate businesses. The right people. We're 100% construction focused with a deep experience bench of what I mentioned before, CPAs, project managers, people that can write reports, just people who know how to get things done. And we've been the Sage North American Business Partner a few years, 2006, 2011, we're actually the current reigning Sage Business Partner of the Year. And right now, we've worked with many customers, primarily across the South and in California. And like I said before, this helps us to have a good understanding of your local, of anything local that's going on for you. So our approach to helping you, we first work with you to help identify causes of inefficiency, and then using this information and our knowledge of what software is out there and available to you, we can help solve your solutions. And then finally deliver. We do provide full documentation for the implementation process just to ensure a smooth and efficient go-live process. So what you'll see today in Sage 100 Contractor, it should help you in all areas on your screen. And these are the primary values that at Alliance Solutions Group that we feel like we offer by providing software solutions and consulting services. So with that, I am going to pass controls over to Kevin. One second, Kevin. Here you go.
Thank you, Tim. You should be able to hear me okay.
Yep.
Perfect. You should be able to see my screen with the service dashboard.
Yes, sir. You're all set.
Perfect. All right, we'll get going then. I appreciate the introduction, Tim. So again, our focus today is on Sage 100 Contractor, really geared toward the specialty market. Both subcontractors, plumbers, electricians, door installers, whatever you might be, where you're more labor intensive. A lot of times you have a work order dispatch need to follow through with. and a lot more driven around the employee side than a typical GC that may be subbing all the work out. Sage 100 Contractor has been around for over 30 years, and so it was developed to work both with commercial contractors, home builders, and specialty contractors. So we're really going to focus on how it ties into a specialty contractor today. If you're looking at my screen, this is a typical desktop of a Sage 100 specialty contractor. As we click on the different navigation across the top, my desktop changes. And so the nice thing about that is you can have up to 10 different groups of icons depending on what your focus is in the company. So I took the one under service and clients and kind of adjusted it and put some things on there we're going to cover today. On the left-hand side is a listing of all the options we have within the menu. Now I can easily hide that menu if I don't need those right off the bat. That way I can work with just the desktop I want to work with and have a little more real estate to work with. Now layered on top of the whole product is the dashboard. So we can see in the top left-hand corner, we can see a breakdown between our job cost by cost code. We can see a bar chart of our income versus expenses. We can see outstanding change orders, our cash account, our cash position. We can see cash flow on our different jobs, underbilled jobs, financials, accounts payable, accounts receivable, aging. All of these have an underlying report behind them. So all I need to do is click on that report. I can see the report behind it. I can actually click all the way into a particular item on that report and open up the transaction detail underneath it. So the drill down is very efficient in the program. So I'm not running multiple reports, but I can drill down to those reports that we need more information on. Let's take, for example, a committed cost report. Here it is for an excavation contractor. And so one of the things we're not able to get at this point in time in QuickBooks is that committed cost forecast on a particular line item. So this one shows us budgets, changes, minus cost, minus committed cost, how much we have remaining. And again, since this is all interactive in a Windows environment, it gives me the ability to drill down, see those transactions behind it, and drill all the way into the software, even down to the general ledger transaction if I so need to. All of that, of course, is driven by security. So even though we see a lot of confidential information on this dashboard, this is all controlled by what my role is in the company and what I can see or what I can't see within that company. Now, if we go to the menu structure again a little bit, so we have the normal general ledger, APA, our financials that you would expect in such an integrated system. Payroll, of course. Payroll allows us to be able to job cost individual payroll by hour, by cost code to each job. And we're on to the fully burden of jobs. So if you're paying for the medical, you're paying for part of the Social Security, we're able to fully burden those jobs so you can see the true cost of that employee working on that job site, which then gives you true margin profitability analysis. Project management's driven around the new construction projects you work on, from estimating through budgeting, through purchase orders. Even if you sub some of the work out, we can track that. Within our document control, we can handle a lot of the paper side of the business, tracking your RFIs, your submittal log, doing your daily field reports, your punch list. We'll go into that in a little more detail. And then there's our estimating. If we're a subcontractor, specialty contractor that uses a lot of heavy equipment, that equipment is very expensive, and again, to get true cost picture on your job, you need to be allocating that cost back to the job so you can get a true picture. Most estimators we deal with are, associating that cost with the job when they estimate. Sometimes when it gets to the actual job costing, we drop the ball there and stop doing it. So it's making our jobs look like they made a lot more money than they did. If we have a backhoe that's worth $50 an hour, we should be charging $50 an hour to that job. And so that's what the equipment management module allows us to do. And not only that, but we can track all of our expenses associated with that heavy equipment. Then scheduling allows us to be able to do similar to like a Microsoft Projects type scheduling, where we get a schedule, a Gantt chart, and able to see how our projects are coming along. And then service receivables and inventory. We have the ability to do inventory with multiple warehouses and multiple locations without a problem. Also in service receivables, that allows us to track work orders for our work order side of the business. We have some specialty contractors that are 100% work order driven with work orders out in the field. Other ones that are 100% new construction, maybe 100% new construction on residential or 100% new construction focusing on commercial. And so let's start off first with the service side of it and touch on that. So I'm going to open up our service module. And so what the service module allows us to do is simply to create a work order, send it out in the field. And so I'm going to skim through this rather quickly, is that I can pick and choose who the client is that I'm sending the work order to. I can choose the task, so it might be I have a plumbing leak. And then I could stop there and make a little note, see Joe about plumbing leak. And then I could save that particular one, and then I may go to my dashboard and try to see who's available that day. And so there's my work order, and I may push it out and say, hey, I'm going to have Billy do it on Saturday, and I'm going to give him a few hours to do that work. And then I may right-click on this and say, I'm going to email Billy so he'll know this work order is coming and get it on a smartphone. So now I'm going to close this down for a second, and let's open up my mobile application to Billy, who's out in the field right now. So we have a dashboard inside our mobile application. This will work on any mobile browser out there. And so this gives you an example if he wants to see how much he's been doing today, how many work orders he's covered. If I go to the assignment tab, it gives me the ability to see what he has assigned to him. So there's that work order 114 that we just assigned to him on Saturday. So immediately he sees the work orders that are out there and what needs to be done. So I could have Billy come in there, open up the work order if it's Saturday. One of the nice things about our mobile system is it gives us full access to all of the work orders that have ever been done at this client. So it allows Billy to be able to see what's been done, the history, see who was out there last. I can see all the notes. So here's that particular note about see Joe about plumbing leak. I can start and stop my travel time. I can add labor as I go through, add parts and pieces. If I give them the ability to do purchase orders, they can go to the supply house, create a purchase order, which will then be linked up with this work order and allow me to be able to budget it. I can also create things like form designs. So if I'm doing a preventive maintenance out in the field, and we'll see some people that will do some of these forms with new construction where they want to be able to have a certain form, and it could be alarm companies, on installation checks, whatever it might be. And so it allows us to be able to create those custom forms, have them available on a mobile tablet. All that information is going to be created out in the field and maintained out in the field to be able to work with. So we won't go into a lot of detail. I just want to kind of show you a little bit about the mobile product so we can capture all this information out in the field. And then when we go back into the office, it will sync all of this data back up. So the office won't have to do any double data entry. Then we can finish the billing out, invoice the bill, whatever our next step may be. Now if I jump over to another version of our mobile application for service work orders is the customer side. We do have customers out there that want to be able to go into a portal, put in a work order request, and then allow us to take over, because the society is so driven by let's get on the internet and do the work. This allows them to be able to do it. So if they want to go in and request service, they can go in, request what's going on. If they have a purchase order number that it goes with, they may say it's a high priority. If it relates to a piece of equipment, or maybe they've taken a picture and they want to upload it, they can take all that information and then submit the request. This request can go automatically in as a work order that needs to be assigned, or you can take it at another level. If you already have a technician that works with them all the time, you can have it automatically assigned to that technician, depending on what the role is. Either way, the dispatcher in your office will get a copy of this and allow them to make sure it gets taken care of. The other things you're able to do, if you're the customer out in the field, is you can see a listing of all the requests we've done out there. You can see a listing of all the work orders that have ever been done at that site. So if you want to be able to see a history of invoices or work orders, again, these are all optional depending on what you want to show your customer. But you can have all your customers set up with a login, and allows that service side of the business to go a lot smoother. Now, we have some other videos that we have posted on Alliance Solutions Group I spend a lot more time going into this, but I just wanted to touch on it briefly to show you on the work order side, and especially contractor, we handle that without a problem. So let's go now back into the new construction side for a specialty contractor. So the first thing I would do, I'm going to pull up a estimating job. We have estimating that's built into the software that I can open up. And then I may have broken this out. So this is one that I've been working on with an electrical company. So it allows me to create assemblies, parts and pieces, all integrated within inventory. It allows me to be able to drop in the description, the unit to cost, do markups, put in suppliers that I'm buying it from, put in cost codes that I'm budgeting it from. When I get a recap, it allows me to see real quickly what my budget is. One of the challenges we run into when I'm doing this in Excel is that there's no way to summarize the budget and quickly get it into the system, so people end up having to retype that budget again. Also, we can see here from vendors, this is a listing of the 3 vendors that we've chosen to buy the material. Maybe they were the ones that gave us the bid on the request for proposal, and we put them in the system. Someone now, if this is all sitting in my Excel, has to re-put this into the system. And then we may get a summary like this that kind of lays out, okay, here's what my cost is, my overhead, my profit markup, and then the bid amount at the end. And so this gives you a good feel for a little bit about being able to do an estimate in the system, tie it into the budget, tie it into the purchase orders. So once this thing gets approved, I can do something as simple as click on one button and export the budget. Maybe I want to create the purchase orders, and so I'm going to click on Create Purchase Orders. So it tells me that I have 3 people I'm creating the purchase order from, and so I'm going to come over here and select myself as the one that does the purchase order. And now I have the purchase orders created. Now again, I could have done this inside of Excel, so let's look at what was created. So this is job number 10, so I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open up job number 10. Now from this window, this is my job setup screen, where I can put who the contacts are, the different locations of the job, any other particular setup issues I want to deal with. Well, down here when I click on the budget tab, it shows me real quickly the budget on this job that I just exported. Again, I could have typed this budget in, but now it saved me a step because it's all integrated. Here's a list of those 3 purchase orders I just created. Same thing, I could have typed these in individually, but since I already had them listed on my estimate, this just saved me a step. So let's look at that one for Home Depot. So you can see the Home Depot, this particular purchase order had 25 line items inside my estimate. And so instead of coming in and typing in those 25 line items, which frankly is one of the reasons why people don't use purchase orders today, because it's too time consuming. They find out that it would be much easier to print a list of Excel, send it to the supply house, and bypass the accounting structure, the committed cost structure within the system. So here it allows me to be able to see the various items within that. I can also come over here, and even though I export this, I can still add some other parts and pieces. And so the database that was built inside the system when we started with you, we can see all the different items that I have on there. And then if I want to go into there and pick and choose based on the parts I've set up in the system, I can drop it right in, type in it for lights. I need eaches, and I'm going to do a lump sum on this one. And so I'm adding a piece inside the purchase order. So we're able to do things like this so that we can have these line items directly within the purchase order. I click on Print. This allows me to be able to do a printout of that particular purchase order. It shows you an example of one of those purchase orders. So you can see how quickly I created a purchase order because I was able to have estimating integrate within the product. I just showed you one example. Another thing is that any report I print out of the system, I can also send through Outlook if I'm using Outlook as my email. We also have the ability to do Gmail if I'm using Gmail or Yahoo, but Outlook's one of the tools. If I'm using that on my desktop already, it really saves some time by just clicking on the Outlook button. It opens up any report that I want to print, anything that's in printable fashion, drops it in here, and I can put my name, subject, and send it on to whoever it's going to go to. Now, one of the other things we're able to do is some of the document capture here. Let's say I sent this purchase order out, and I sent it and received an email to the customer signed off on it, not the customer, the supplier signed off on it, agreed to it, sent it back. So now we've confirmed that we all agree on the pricing here. I'm going to open up my Outlook. And let's say this was my Outlook email. It just came back from the supplier that approved the pricing. I can do as simple as drag and drop it to the screen. And now I've attached that document to the purchase order. The same functionality works with change orders that have been signed off on, proposals that have been signed off on, drawings that have been put in the system and getting updates on. All of that can be tracked within the system and flow all the way through. So that way it allows us to be able to track that document. We can also take it a step further. We have a product called Sage Paper List that allows a true full-blown document management AP routing tool that works with our Sage 100 Contractor. So let's look at now. We've done some work orders and run some information. We've put the budgets, the purchase orders in the system. Now let's look at some of the reports we can look at around this. I'm going to come over here to one of my report screens. Here's a detailed report on our purchase order audits. One of the critical things is if I'm going to create a purchase order, it's going to flow all the way through to accounting so that accounting knows exactly what we ordered, the quantity, the price. When they receive it, they can match it up against that purchase order without retyping any information. You can put controls in place where they can never pay more than the purchase order amount, or you can give them a variance. Maybe it's copper pipe that's going to constantly change. So you can tell the accounts payable person they can be within 2% of the purchase order and still approve it. Otherwise, it would take a project manager's intervention. If a lot of subcontractors still subcontract out some of the work out there, and so a lot of that's due to they may have a part, maybe they're a low voltage specialty contractor and they're hiring a master electrician to be part of the job. So the subcontract module automatically comes with it, allows us to track the draws, the change orders, the different schedule and values, and different pieces associated with that. So it allows us to track that within the subcontract side. Now, looking at as we start operating the job, we have schedules. So let's look at one of the schedules we have out here. So if anybody's used Microsoft Projects, will be very familiar with this schedule tool. It looks very similar to Microsoft Projects where we have different tasks, we have durations, we have types of tasks which give us our different coloring associated with it. If a task gets moved around because I'm working within the project, I can adjust the task, move them about, put notes in there why they moved. For any particular task, I can come over here and I can associate the equipment, the employees, or even the subcontractors that are doing that particular task. And then we're able to always keep track of, through a recap, all the jobs we have going and what their statuses are and compare them so we can kind of see on a very large basis what it looks like in the system. And so this comes as part of the core system, and so if I'm tracking my employees, where they're at, my equipment, my subcontractors, we're able to do that within the system, within that scheduling tool. Now, when we look at some of the reports, let's talk about some of the reports we can get out of the system. We'll take this one, for example. We'll take one of the larger reports. This is the budget versus actual versus cost. One of the things you'll see right away if you're on a QuickBooks or Peachtree is now we have a different column that's tracking the change budget from a change order. So we can see the budget plus minus the changes, the total amount, and how much we've spent to date. And of course, as I showed earlier, all of these have the ability to drill down. Let's look at one that's our most detailed report. And we'll do this for a particular job. Let's see. I'm going to go into the excavation job here. So you can see here, this one will show you by budget category every transaction from accounts payable to payroll, even general ledger, whatever you've job cost, it'll show you every transaction that makes up that amount. Now, if I'm in the office, I'm going to use the job cost report and drill down for this detail. But if I'm out of the office and I don't have access to the internet, I may have this emailed to me. Let's take a moment to talk about some of the ways we can export this data out of the system. So we talked about the Outlook button. This allows me to email this directly out. But if I have 10 project managers and I'm sending them all of these reports every Friday, it gets very labor. It takes a lot of labor, a lot of time commitment to be able to send this out every single Friday. So what we recommend is push my little scheduler button. Say I want this thing to go out every Tuesday and Friday. I want to email it, and I select the persons I want to email it to. And it's as simple as that. Now this report will go out every Tuesday and Friday until I turn the report off. So you find those core reports within the system that you want to manage the company by, whether they go to accounts payable clerks, whether they go to project managers, superintendents, or whether they go to owners or even CPAs outside of the office. Those can be scheduled and sent so that it doesn't take any human intervention to be able to send those out and take the time each time we're in the system. Now let's take another option here within our reporting. I showed you the little job cost report. I'll show it to you again on this particular job cost report. Let's say I wanted to export it to Excel. Now, one of the challenges you always have exporting a report to Excel is it shows up in Excel and it's just a flat file dump and it's really meaningless data because it's hard to read. I'm just going to move one column over a little bit, give myself some room. So notice how clean this report comes into the system. And the ones that are color-coded, if you'll notice when I click on them, those are all formulas. So it not only brought in the data from the report, but anywhere there was a formula inside the report, it carried that formula and recreated it inside Excel. So if I'm doing what-if analysis outside the system, it's easy to do within this without having to retype all this information over again. So again, anything we can do to save a step with the integrated product really works out well for us. Let's say we didn't want to do a PDF, but we want to actually create the report within Word. Here is that exact same report, export it to Word. So now it's just a Word document that I can add to, manipulate, put notes on. Notice how clean it came in. It looks exactly like the report we print out in the system as a PDF. And so, again, it makes it easy to export this. Maybe it's a proposal that I export to Word and then I add some pictures to it, clean it up, add some graphs, whatever it might be. So again, we're trying to find ways not to do things twice within the system. And so that's what some of these export capabilities allow us to be able to do. As I'm running through the project, I may want to see how we're doing so far on profitability. Well, profitability is always going to be run with you accountants in the room by GAAP, where we have how much was our revenue minus how much was our expenses. Well, as an owner, I might want to know, okay, it's great to know if I'm ahead from a profitability standpoint, but what's my pocketbook look like? How much money do I have in this job? So this will show you whether the owner or GC you're working for is funding the job or whether you're funding the job. So it allows you to stay on top of that. Maybe when you see some negatives, it reminds you to go ahead and get the next bill out of the system. So that gives us some different pieces along the job side. Now, on the revenue side, let's talk about that for a second. I'm going to pull up a typical progress bill, and we'll just take one of the progress bills that's in the system. And so when I do a progress bill within the system, it allows me to put the schedule of values in, whether it's 3 lines or 100 lines long, put in the percent complete, calculate retention, if retention is going to be held back by the GC, and then run a very professional G702, G703 report. And so these are the imitation reports without the red lettering, so it's very similar to the G702, G703. You can adjust the words, change everything within the form design to fit how yourself, or maybe an attorney that you work with has asked you to change things. Again, I can send this directly out of the system without having to worry about exporting this, saving it to a PDF, and then attaching it to an email. So we have the standard progress bill. Now, for some of you dirt contractors in the room, we also have the ability to do unitary billing. So this allows us to schedule out how many units we're going to complete, how many units we've completed so far within the system, and how many units we have left to go. And so this gives us the ability to track those within the system. I'm not doing percent complete, but I'm doing more unit-based billing. We look at some of the other options out here. We have the ability to do time and material billing. So if I'm billing the labor out at a certain rate per hour, I'm marking the material up at a certain rate. Allows me to put those pieces in there and track them accordingly. Now, since we're tracking all of our retention out there that the GC is holding on to, this gives you just a little example of what that report looks like. A lot cleaner than some of the other reports we see out in the field today. You can see there's a separate column for retention, so you can see how much your money is tied up in retention, waiting for that GC to release it, or if you're working direct with the owner, waiting for them to release it. So instead of being mixed in with the rest of your accounts receivable, it allows you to differentiate and see that piece a little bit differently than the rest of it. Same kind of concept works in accounts payable, where I can track the aging report there and see it along the way. Now, if you're a specialty contractor that also has subcontractors working for you, we can track lien waivers, we can track all of the workers' comp and general liability associated with that sub. Also, credit card management. We're seeing a lot more superintendents out there going to the supply house with a credit card, and that's getting to be very cumbersome for the accounting staff to track. This allows me to job cost all those credit card receipts, to be able to reconcile them and then pay off the credit card in full or in balances as we go through. Now in payroll, let's switch to the payroll screen for a second. Some of the key reports we find within our payroll, for example, the workers' comp report. This is a critical report that when that audit comes up, I don't want to spend weeks trying to recreate this so the audit goes smoothly. It allows us to be able to create that workers' comp report directly out of the system. Also, the other thing you're able to do with the system is that even though each employee has a workers' comp rate or code that they default to, if they work in a higher risk task or a lower risk task, it can adjust their workers' comp code based on what they actually did for work, and you can have that where it'll do that automatically in the system. So that if you're a roofer and they're not always on top of the roof, which is the high risk category, maybe they're on the ground putting up scaffolding, maybe they're on the ground sweeping up, picking up trash. Those things are obviously a lot lower risk than being 5 stories in the air, and so you can adjust and see which workers' comp rate may be appropriate for them. What about if you do certified payroll? So a lot of specialty contractors, when they're working with government, do certified payroll. We have the USD certified payroll report built into the system. I think right now we're up to 30 or 35 state-specific reports for certified payroll. I think we almost have every one that has a state that's specific where they've asked not to use the federal but to use the state report. And again, I can print this directly out of the system, track all of those certified reports, track all of those special rates that we're paying the employee, so we can make sure and cover that and take care of it. Here's an example of one of the detailed labor reports. Now, I've showed you the budget versus actual and showed you how we can drill down to that and see the breakdown between material, labor, and all the categories. But sometimes you have a superintendent out in the field that's not any of their responsibility to know what the cost is or even what employees make within your company. Their whole role is you give them a budget on how many hours they have to complete a task, and that's what their job is, to finish it within the budget. So we have reports like this that's an example of, I can go through and I can see as a superintendent who's worked on it, how many hours. You can see where it has the word uncomputed payroll. If I have the data being captured daily, I can actually run this report daily. And so if it's a short job, 1 or 2 weeks long, they can stay on top of that budget versus actual and not wait for it to get posted over in payroll. So it allows them to stay on top of it a lot quicker. Now, talking about payroll for a second, let's look at one of our daily field reports. So here's an example of a daily field report. So if I'm tracking that daily field report, I can do this with mobile tools, which are an additional cost to the software, or I can do this within the software. So it allows me to track which employees were there, how many hours they worked, any notes associated with it. If they worked on a certified job, the system will automatically compare their regular rate to the certified rate and adjust accordingly when this gets fed automatically into payroll. If I'm tracking the equipment that was used, because I use the equipment module, I can track that and allocate that cost to the job. If I'm doing road work and I want to track how many units were completed, I can track how many units were completed within the job. So This is all part of the core document control section. And so once I have it in there, I'm able to track all this information. So the equipment will automatically flow to the equipment job costing for the job. The units can flow into the unitary billing, and then the employee's time will all flow into their time cards for payroll to be able to track payroll and to be able to flow that to the system. Depending on the kind of contractor we are, we may have punch lists we have to track. Who's going to do our punch list? Is it somebody inside? Is it going to be somebody outside? So let's stay on top of these punch lists. We may want to have alerts sent to different people so that those punch lists are taken care of. So we make sure those are taken care of within the system. I mentioned early on about inventory. So we have the ability, again, to do inventory at multiple locations, track multiple prices by vendor. And so it's a very, very good inventory package to be able to go very deep into the product to be able to handle the things you're looking for. So that kind of takes us from top to bottom within the software. One of my goals today was not to specifically demo all the parts of the software within Sage 100 Contractor, but just kind of touch on various areas within the software so you can get a feel for what it does and what it doesn't do. And so we'll be glad to work with you, have a personalized demo with you one-on-one so we can speak to your specific industry, whether you're a plumber, an electrician, whether you install garage doors, whatever it might be. That allows us to be able to focus on that area that you're doing to see if this software is a good fit for you. Right now there's about 8,000 customers. I think the last time I saw was about 35% of them were subcontractors, maybe a little bit more, depending on the type of subcontractors there are out there. But it's a mixture of GCs, residential GCs, and specialty contractors. So I'll use that as a stopping point. Does anybody have any questions at this point about anything I've covered so far?
Hey, everybody, this is Tim. I know we had a couple people show